Good afternoon. As always, folks, how do I sound? I know I look colorful.
Sound seems good.
Awesome. Well,
Beautiful as always.
Oh, well, as you can tell by the shirt and the shorts, beautiful downtown Fairfax is experiencing a hell of a heat wave. Apparently, it's 75 or 76 degrees. So, hey, I thought I would break out the summer gear a mere 5 months in advance. So, yeah, nice day here, sunny, warm, and lots of good stuff to talk about. So, hey, let's get started. I have a bit of a headache, so I don't know how long I'll do the Q&A. It sort of, depends on how this goes and what questions you folks ask. But let's start it with the good news. First bit of good news, we're checking another item off the Beta 1 checklist today. And that is the first pass working armor, shields, and weapons in-game. So that item is gone. One of the things we did, and it's actually going to be the first thing I talk about, is all the foundation that we laid to make that happen. So let's start with the top 10-ish list, which will explain that item. Number 1, underwear is added to the... Oh, wait, not underwear. Oh, no.
I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
I was going, ah!
I just gave you that.
What did I write?
Yeah.
So, in a way, underwear is actually added to the game. But what it means is that we have finished the first pass on weapons, armors, and the item system that drives it, that Christina has been working on. And so now you folks actually do have the multi-layers of armor that we've always said that you would have. So you could go into the game, you can put on a shirt, you can then put on armor on top of that. So we've got a lot of different line items under this first top 10 item. See it in today's update. But the big news is, obviously, one item off the list, and the new item system in. And from what we can tell from the testing we've been doing all week, looking really good. So, Christina, great job. Folks, every week we've been saying we get closer. And one of the things you'll see from this update, saw from the last update, we really are. More gameplay than ever is getting put into the game, which brings us to point number 2, crafting. So I haven't talked about that a lot other than, in updates and not, more Q&A than actual in the top 10-ish. Because frankly, it's not terribly exciting to see, oh, Mark works on spreadsheet. Not exciting. Or Mark does, a technical design document. Not very exciting. On the other hand, because the item system's in, because we now have 2 full-time game programmers in Christina and Matt, we're able now to do things we couldn't do, months ago. So one of the things that's now been getting some love, the crafting system. So whether it is, adding new functionality that we didn't think we were going to have last year, or just having another set of eyes and programmer eyes working with Ben and I on expanding the system or making even changes to the system or just debating bits of the system, all of that is happening, and it's happening pretty much every day. So that's an absolute top 10-ish list, and I think you folks are really going to like what you see in terms of, don't want to say just the complexity of the system, because if it's overly complex, it doesn't mean it's any fun, but just the depths of the system. So next up, improved VFX or rendering system. So we've been speaking about this for, oh boy, many, many weeks. It's something that's obviously quite important to the game. It's a giant milestone for us in terms of, hey, what do we have to knock down before we can give you a date for beta? Because just like Andrew's, animation system, if that's not in, and if that's not working, and if the artists don't have very clear direction about what they need to do, whether it's on animation or VFX, it's absolutely ludicrous to set a date. So George has laid the foundation. We're in very good shape. The interesting bit here, so George and Andrew were working on this system off of paper, a white paper that was written about this kind of a system. So, they implement the system and starting to run some tests and looking pretty good. And Andrew's looking at it going, I think something's not going to work here. And Andrew actually found the problem in the white paper, and it had been a white paper that had been peer reviewed. So that was quite interesting. So what we're going to have is really cutting edge. It's one of those things, just as we've said from the beginning that we're not focused on trying to give you that Crytek or now Lumberyard experience, because those engines can't support what we're going to be able to and what we can support today. But what we are always looking to do, and when you have two guys who are as strongly graphically focused as George and Andrew are, is to look for techniques, look for things that we can pull into our game that will take its look to that level without looking to add a lot of extra baggage. And that's one of the things about the VFX system. For what we need it to do, it's going to, not only is it going to do it, it's going to do it at a very fast rate. So we're very excited about it. More of the system, just like Andrew's work in progress animation system, are going to be going in over the coming weeks. Next up, Tech Art Audio. So DB keeps adding in more subtle ambient tracks. Now, we all know how important that is. I know a lot of you Dark Age of Camelot players certainly have said to me on the forums, when we get together, in emails, on other forums, how much you love the music from Dark Age, how much you love and how important it is to have music and sounds that feel right. So that's another thing we continue to make progress on. Guild and Social UI. So, yes, it's here. JB streamed about it this week. He's had a lot of work to do to get that in place, and coming together nicely. First pass on the manual aiming system. So for those who are in our alpha tests before the rehab, we had a very basic aiming system that Andrew had conjured up. So that is now working again, and we're now looking to do interesting things with it. So that's been one of the focuses of Matt's over the last few days, and we'll continue with that. So again, another gameplay feature, because kind of important for archers, right? So I've got some really bad news for you. I have to announce a death in the family. Our experimental patcher is dead. It's really sad, and it had a short but very productive life. Its parent, Dave, is holding a wake for it now. Donations are not expected, but it is dead. Dave has been working very hard to give us a solution that obviously does everything the experimental patcher did, as well as maintaining, of course, functionality for the vast majority of you who weren't using it. So he's done that. We've been running tests for weeks on it. We've had very successful, really nothing but successful tests over the last couple of weeks with it. There's always an outlier or two, of course, but the patch is working great. This weekend, hopefully, you beta folks actually might be able to test it for the first time. Next, the separate physics server. So one of the things that we've been doing here, and you folks know who have been following the more technically oriented updates, is building out a design that is very robust, and that involves whether it's the proxy work or now the physics server. It's all about setting up separate servers to do the job we need them to do, meaning that so that the main game can continue to do its thing without worrying about, oh my god, I'm stuck on this one calculation and that took way too many milliseconds. And it's great when you can talk just milliseconds. But that's what we've done. Colin landed that, and we're testing it, and so far so good. The beauty with that, of course, is that once we have that physics server, separate physics server, then it will not only speed up or allow us to do the kind of calculations we need to do with as many people playing the game and blowing up stuff and building stuff, but even more importantly, it means if sometimes that server has a bit of lag, if it chokes on something for just a little bit, it won't affect the main game, and that is really important. And that's one of the reasons we moved it out there. First place of power has been, or the current place of power has been updated. Apparently something is going on. Hang on, folks. Something is going on outside. I don't think it's anything bad, but the entire office just got up and is making noise.
Oh, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile is outside.
Oh.
That required everybody to stop and look.
Yeah, so yeah, if you didn't hear that, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile is outside. This is how pathetic life in Fairfax County can be, that we got so excited by the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile.
I was going to fill in a bit of the place of power progress.
Go right ahead.
We did a whole bunch of work last week just on materials, and pretty much all the afternoon I've been just trying to look at all the materials and make everything pretty, and several people's heads are being butted as we try and figure out how to make crystals look like cool crystals, rock look like cool rock, and cool statues look like cool statues. So we're starting to go into the cleanup.
So another odd item, we knocked out an additional human-shaped root structure for the forest.
I had no idea what to call that.
Yeah, you have to see it to understand it.
It'll be in the update.
So more updates to our character system, so we could, actually have the items and armor update, including Under Armor. Sorry, don't sue me. For the game. The 12th item on our top 10-ish list today is the TDD and Viking unique pole arms. So you've seen some of the work that Michelle did last week on concepts, and now John has been modeling them. So we're going to see them in the game sooner rather than later.
And there'll be pictures in the update.
So the last item on the list is animations, and so Scott has been, you guys saw who were in the early test that our hands were a bit off, so Scott has been working on that. Also, he did a first pass on pole arm.
Sandra did.
Oh, sorry, Sandra did. The way he wrote it
Yeah,
really
I saw
badly.
That
yeah, see? He started with Scott, and then the opening of the next sentence said, after completing a preliminary pass on pole arms.
Sandra.
Yeah, but if you had said,
Oh,
Sandra
yes.
completed a preliminary pass on pole arms. So yeah, which is great. So you're going to actually be seeing that as well in the game very quickly. So that's it on the top 10-ish list. The only thing else that give you two more things that I need to talk to you about. The first one is a fun one. Well, actually, they're both fun. Janet, the lady Jay, my son and I are heading to the West Coast next week, at the end of next week. And so we may have to get together with some of our backers, you folks in Seattle and Portland. We're doing hey, let's go see the studio and see how we can move along things on getting an office space. And then going down the coast a bit, hanging out on the beach for a few days, and then leaving from Portland. So we may have two opportunities to get through to meet with backers, but because we're going to three cities in all fairness, two cities in one, very small townish like place. I don't know how much time we'll have, but we should be able to find time at least for a coffee with folks, if not the full blown meal and question extravaganza that it always turns into. So we'll keep you posted on that. In terms of this weekend's test, as of now, we are all set for an alpha NIT test. I will know in about an hour or so if the Beta 1 folks, whether we'll be inviting you guys and gals into the test as well. So far, we're looking good. I don't want to make any promises, but I'll let you know in about an hour or so if it will be a full weekend. We are certainly going to have an alpha and IT test, though. The build that's up there is very stable. It's working great. There are some issues, as all the builds have issues, but none of them major, none of them game-breaking, none of them horrible. So there will certainly be a weekend test, and hopefully it will be a weekend alpha, beta 1, and IT test. So that's it on the update. Again, things are going absolutely swimmingly. The additional programmers have been doing just what we expected them to do. We are churning out gameplay features and code faster than we certainly have ever been able to do it before. And the art team, they just keep trucking along doing their thing. We've come to expect nothing but joy from
Making
them,
pretty things.
and they haven't failed us yet. That's it. And so it's about 4:16. I can guarantee you about 20 minutes. I may do more depending on how I feel. So let's go. Let's go to the questions, Tyler.
I have no questions yet, just a lot of talk about erections and wienermobiles.
Oh, good. Thanks for living up to my expectations, folks.
Oh, this is going to go too fast.
Yeah, you can slow it down.
That part that Max didn't tell me how to do.
Ask
Odilvik.
somebody in Twitch streaming will probably tell you.
Odilvik, I guess, asks for Medic. Medic would like to know roughly how many 30-minute across islands on a single server will there be at launch? A handful, a dozen, a few dozen. I think he's asking about size. If it was a 30-minute jaunt per island, how many of those?
Well, it's not going to be a 30-minute jaunt per island. Some of the islands will be closer together. Some will be further apart. If we have a lot of islands and it's a minimum of 30 minutes to take a boat ride or a worm ride or whatever it is we eventually use to go between islands, that would really put a lot of strain on the game, especially in the beginning. So we'll see.
Now here's a fun one. Do you know how to sing the Oscar Mayer Wiener theme song? Do you remember the words?
Of course I do. I saw, even if I had forgotten them from my youth, I am such a Demolition Man fan that if I had forgotten that, see, got him.
Yeah.
If I had forgotten that, I should be drawn and quartermained.
Girl1994 asks, how long do you plan on having the lifetime sub option available?
Well, certainly we're cutting, as we said, we're cutting it off at live at the latest. The most important question is going to be how long are we going to have the builder tier open after we go into beta. And that's going to be the first thing that happens. And then we'll cut off the lifetime probably sometime after that. The idea is we don't want, we have been so clear that whether it's through our continued refund policy, that we're not interested in taking people's money under false pretenses. So we want to give you a really good feeling for the game, especially the new folks, before you're, come in and buy the lifetime sub. Especially after the refund policy changes, which it will do again, as we've said, as we get through beta. So, that's something that's still to be determined. You'll have plenty of notice, though, and if you've seen, me post on Massively or MMORPG, I'm very straight. I always say the same thing, and very straightforwardly. Take your time, look at how things are evolving, and then make the decision. There won't be a, oh my God, if you don't get it today, or you haven't seen us do, hey, we're having a sale. No, we're not doing that. So you will have plenty of time to make that decision.
Odilvik asks a really good question here, which I made a note for, because I have a feeling that if you haven't already said yes to this before, you're going to say, that's a great idea. Could crafters, high-end crafters, create golems, not the Arthurian race, but a simple automaton that could be used for basic labor or maybe extra cannon fodder on the battlefield? Perhaps these crafted golems could be used as sentries at homes or used as extra guards for caravans.
Well, so that's a slightly complicated question. because it really touches on a few things. One of which, of course, is something that I've been very clear about from the beginning, which is RVR. Having a golem, having even a pet, having anything that eats up a lot of tries is something that we're staying away from whenever possible. It's one of the reasons we went with spirit pets versus, more typical, I don't want to say tropish, but more typical pet classes. And so that would apply here as well. It's the same with horses or any sort of a mount. Anything that really takes away from our ability to deliver, great frame rates in large-scale battles is something that has to go through an awfully difficult need test. So I don't know if we need that for the game. On the other hand, for NPC guards, for your homes, that's a whole different story. So, separating the two, I would say that it's certainly possible we could have a system like that for guards for your homes, because we're not expecting large-scale battles around anyone's typical home, versus, hey, this is something that 500 people could decide to bring into combat and really mess stuff up.
Here's an interesting question from Lawtween. Will there be a brace yourself skill to counter the effects of skills that include a knockback more than just the effect of the mass of the target?
Well, I haven't discussed that kind of ability with Ben in detail, but I think the answer to that would certainly be yes. We try to have, obviously, abilities and then counters to those abilities. So if we're going to have a lot of spells that have knockback, and when I say if, because all of this is subject to testing. I mean, certainly there were things in Warhammer that I was really for that some players didn't like, in whether they were exaggerated pulls or other abilities like that. And then had some people loved it. So we'll see where it shakes out. But if in that case where you have an ability that's a reactive to another ability, well, let's make sure that the first ability actually goes in there.
There's a couple of questions we haven't talked about. I haven't seen questions around Veil Walkers and Stalkers in a long time. So there's an interesting question here. If the Veil Walker enter the Veil abilities or components, can they be modified by other components? And basically, could you create a bunch of different types of enter or exit the Veil skills?
Sure. I mean, so that's the whole idea behind the ability crafting system, is that it is an ability crafting system, so that if you have components, no matter what they are, that they can be acted on and modified by other, ability components. It's, no different whether you're whether you're an archer, or whether you're a Veil Walker, a Veil Stalker. It's all a matter of taking components and then being able to do stuff with them.
There's an interesting question here from a Sharon's Call player who's looking for the next best PvP game and wants to know, will our game be as great as a Sharon's Call? Asheron's, sorry.
Yeah, experienced
Never
MMO
played that
guide,
one.
right? You remember when, if you saw the update, when he was talking about how I insisted that the amount of MMOs that he had actually played weren't huge enough?
Yeah.
Asheron's Call is a perfect example.
Asheron's.
Yeah. Will we be the next great PvP game? Look, that at the end of the day is up to you folks, because it really is both us as the developers and you folks as the players. We have to do a great job, because without that, obviously, nothing matters. But then you folks also have to like the game. You have to play the game. Do I think we're on our track to be the next great, PvP game? As long as that PvP game is not a free-for-all, certainly I think we are on track for that. We've been very clear that this is an RVR game. I have nothing, obviously, against FFA, PvP, but we are an RVR game, just as Dark Age of Camelot was an RVR game. Warhammer, RVR game. That's the kind of game we're making here, and I absolutely want us to be the next great RVR game that I hope, the average PvPer also likes as well. We're certainly building this game with that in mind, and that's all that's in mind. We have certainly resisted any temptation to throw in PvE leveling. It's not hard. It's not like we couldn't do it if we wanted to. It's just that it's distracting. It means making compromises. It means spending more money, especially if you want to make it great. So we're still staying away from that. So if we're successful, will we be the next great PvP/RVR game? We certainly hope to be. There have been some great ones in the past, and we hope to be a great one as well, in the future.
Hell's Ek asks, if what has been said before about lighter armors having better magical defense than heavy armors still holds true, then would there be a huge advantage to a heavy armor wearer who can also wear lighter armors underneath?
I don't think you're quite quoting that right.
No, that's actually almost word for word.
What? No, not you, him.
Oh, okay. It's like I'm reading it
God,
right here.
this is what happens when we have a substitute streamer, right? Max is out.
I'm just going to stop asking you questions.
So what I'm referring to is not what Tyler said, but rather what you said. It's not a question of light versus heavy. It's a question of what metal versus non-metal. That's what I've talked about in the past. That heavy metal, iron, steel, things like that are not necessarily going to have the same reaction to magic as other metals, as other materials. So it's not just weight. It's not just saying something like heavy means whether it's plate armor, because heavy can be leather armor, it can be furs, it can be metal as well. That's what counts. What is in the armor itself? What are you wearing? What have you put on the armor with the engraving system? All of that factors into how armor is going to react when it encounters magic.
Okay. Pamela DeWitt. What will getting materials to a building site be like? Will we have to carry stuff to the structure, just park wagons nearby, or some other scenario?
A combination, of course. Since we have already eschewed the normal model of, hey, you can pack as much stuff into your bag, no matter how much it weighs. You're certainly going to need carts. You're certainly going to need, mounts, to help take stuff there. Will it be left at the building site itself? Yeah, that would seem to be the most logical way to do it. Will you be able to protect the site, which, Pam, is another question you might be thinking of? And the answer is yes, as well. But it won't be about you just filling up your backpack and walking across the map with, 1,100 kilograms of stone in your pocket.
There's a question here from Veruca that I would be interested in the answer because I wasn't sure on it. Veruca would like to know, do the rules for building ownership differ in any way between a contested and uncontested zone? If so, elaborate, please.
Hey, V. So, yes, it will, of course, matter. In terms of the details, we'll talk about that when we get closer. But certainly contested versus non-contested. If you're in a totally non-contested place, we're going to make it easier for you to take the land or take a plot. That only makes sense. In contested lands, it's going to be more difficult. If the land is already owned by somebody, well, that certainly should take longer than trying to claim a plot that is not only in a non-contested area, but is not owned by anybody else. So that is going to be different. In terms of just, very rough broad strokes, is it going to be like, oh my God, if you're going to have to do it in a contested land, it's going to take forever? No, of course not. That would be silly. But it is going to be harder and it is going to be more involved. Because as you folks know, since you're going to be owning your own plots and owning your own buildings, you don't want to have some guy just walk up to your plot and to your building and stomp his feet or click his heels 3 times and say this plot is mine. So, it's going to be something that takes time. It's going to take a little bit of effort, and it will certainly vary depending on where the plot is.
Vangarn would like to know if you'll consider using special world events to create unexpected situations in RVR and create strategical objectives for the realms. For example, one region will spawn more resources during a period of time, so the factions would fight for control of it.
Absolutely. Veil storms will, obviously have effects. We've said from the beginning that the depths will certainly have events and will have its own mind, even if at times we have to like egg it along. Um, it's that sort of thing that will help make the game a little bit different. Certainly night to night, but we're hoping most of the time you folks do it. But every so often, just like any MMO, the developers have to get involved and do something. Hopefully, not very often, and hopefully according to a set of rules, because that's kind of important. But do expect that certainly that sort of thing will happen in this game.
Farrellol asks, will we be able to cancel our own abilities, including melee attacks while casting? And if so, what would be the consequence of doing so, such as full versus reduced cooldown duration?
Yeah, and that's something we're going to work out. Certainly, you should be able to cancel your own ability. There will be consequences. Certainly, if you were casting something major, you're working on a big spell, you're working on something that is taking a lot of time and energy, then you'll be paying a price for it. There may be some abilities as well that you can cancel. That's something Ben and I will always, we'll talk about, because there may be times where you just won't want, or we will want to say that no, once this starts, it really can't stop. Do I expect that'll be the majority of things? No, I don't.
Inebriated Skunk asks, will inventory space be the same for all players, or will it be dependent on worn clothes, bags, etc.? Will inventory space be grid-based or space-based?
Right now it's weight-based. And we've said right from the beginning with this game, we're not looking to make it a bag game, where it really was, if you look at WoW and other games, and back to the old RPGs, where it becomes all about bag management. We're not doing that. We don't want to go down that path. You'll be able to carry a certain amount of weight. You'll be able to carry even more than that weight if you're willing to pay the encumbrance penalties. So, we've been very clear that a person won't be able to wander around with, 10 suits of armor, stuffed in his magical backpack. That just doesn't fit the kind of game we're making. But on the other hand, we also don't want to say, hey, I'm sorry, you've got 12 different items and they all weigh almost nothing, so your bags are full. There'll be a compromise, of course, but we're going to err on the side of giving the players more rather than less, because frankly, because Ben and I were actually discussing this yesterday, because frankly, a few extra items and a few, a little bit larger inventory space than you might have expected, certainly in your homes, doesn't really hurt the game. It just doesn't, even over the long, the long haul. So we're going to err on the side of generosity there, rather than the opposite.
Rec asks, and it's worded a little interestingly, so I'll try and make sure I get it right. Would like to know, will players have a means to influence their projectiles so that the caster has a greater ability to determine if the spell lands besides tracking? Can manual aim plus a selected target work with tracking so that you can curve the shot towards the direction your target is running?
Yes, we do hope that you can do stuff like that in the final system. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're going with the system we are going with. Make it, give as much flexibility as we can to the player with staying away from the whole, you can throw a spell at somebody in most MMOs and it's always going to hit. Even if it doesn't look like it can hit visibly, even though there's no way it should be able to hit, we're staying away from that. On the other hand, we do know that tab targeting for some players is something that they want to see. So there is a nice way to combine the two, and that's what we're going to be working on. But as even you've posted on the forums, I think one of the big wins for us is the same, idea that pushed us to do this in the earliest days of this game, which is the idea of being able to throw fireballs over castle walls. I mean, that's just the bottom line, right? If you're doing everything through tab targeting, how do you do that? How do you target or try to make a spell land somewhere you can't see? And if you do allow, then if the answer is well, then you allow people to see and target there. Well, but that also then, changes the nature of the game. In our case, because you're going to have both manual aiming and some manual aiming and some tab targeting, it's up to you. You can you know how to aim. You will learn how to aim whether it's your catapult, your fire spell, your bow shot, so to make it land where you think it should land and where you want it to land, and that's part of skill, and it's the right part of skill, I think, for this game, because it's not about who can hip hop bunny mage jump around everything and just try to line it up, and try to get lucky, or try to in that case try to avoid getting hit, or who can hit the button the fastest and the most times. This is about you learning how to play the game. This is about learning the range of your weapons, and learning how to position yourself so that the ability will land where you need it to. And that's also where scouts come in. If you remember what we talked about with the scout class, they can help with that as well. So I think we've got a really good thing here, and hopefully when we're finished with it, it will be a great thing.
Dush Baggins asks, is the depths intended to be something like Darkness Falls, or will the entrance be less reliant on RVR control of the world?
Oh no, it's all RVR based. The depths is not meant to be a loot box, based on PvE or by what you pay for. It's all RVR. If you want to get control of the depths, you have to earn that right. But keep in mind, of course, because this is incredibly important, something else we've been saying, that since we know that the realms will never be balanced numerically, because they're not, we have to make sure that you can still get access to the depths, even if you are at a bit of a numerical, disadvantage. So it's not just about who has the most number of people. It's about realms and the players who perform the best. So is it possible that the most imbalanced the realm, the ones with the smallest numbers, could actually get access and the larger side doesn't? Yeah, absolutely. And that's up to how you folks play the game.
Here's an interesting one from Odovic. Will the procedurally generated resource nodes mentioned last Friday have a built-in RNG or queued spawn locations to keep nodes moving and stop node camping?
Yeah, funny you mention that, because that's one of the things I've been writing up docs on and working with Christina and Ben on. There's a bit of RNG into it, certainly. It won't be egregious RNG, but yeah, RNG plays a role. It has to play a role. And what we've told you folks from the beginning, part of our job is to make sure that it isn't egregious. It isn't something that works to the disadvantage of any realm. But we also want to change things up a little bit every so often. We don't want you always to know that if you go there and then you go there and then you go there, that's where you find the spawns, or in this case, certainly the bubbles. So there's going to be some RNG, there's going to be some hand wavy stuff, and that's going to be part of the fun of the game.
Andeg3037 asks, what kind of effects will Veilstorms have on the physics systems in place for RVR, such as blowing loose items, barrels, fallen rocks, players off walls, or siege towers?
Yeah, we expect the Veilstorms to be quite interesting in that way. It won't just be about the storm part, the wind and things like that, because that's just too simple. So expect that when the Veilstorms really come into place as a mechanic, boy, it will, what up, if it's the really big ones. That's part of the challenge. That's something that, will be triggered a lot of times, as we've said in the past, by players' actions.
It's a good one here from Feral All that asks, is manual aim going to be first or third person, or both? And will we aim with a centered crosshair or our movable mouse cursor? Any plans on allowing quick camera switches between different views via hotkey? I figured this was a good one since we're talking about
this is something we'll talk about as soon as we get it working and move forward with it inside the game. While it seems a slightly evasive answer, Well, it's because it is. What I want to be clear on is we don't have a set, this is the way aiming has to be. We want to work with you folks as well as ourselves to see what is fun and works for the game. You know, we have lots of ideas and we have a plan on what we're going to implement, but it's not a question of trying to implement a specific vision for the final aiming system, because, you know, who cares? You know, who cares what I think today or even what the programmers think? It's a matter of what we put in and how it works. We will change stuff. So, you know, keep in mind that whatever we start with, I guarantee you when it comes to aiming, won't be what we finish with. That we will find out as we move through the process and see what works best for everybody.
Mork75 asks, will animation cancellation be a factor in combat like in ESO, where you have a higher damage output, canceling abilities with weapon swap, block, light and heavy attacks, etc.?
This is the stuff we'll be talking about once we get closer to beta. You know, obviously, whether it's animation canceling or anything else that happens with abilities, that too is subject to change. We don't want to make the ability to cancel an ability so simple on either side that you can't ever do it, or that you can do it at no cost, because that's just, you know, that's just silly. We already have a system where, you know, abilities can be disrupted, so the idea of not having any animation canceling doesn't make sense. On the other hand, having a system where it's so easy to cancel that people are just using that as a decoy time and time again, that's also not a lot of fun, you know, especially you're on the other side. So this is something we'll be working out, you know, over the course of beta. So guys, a 5-minute warning.
Yeah, I just got down to the end, and granted I didn't ask every question, but if you guys want to ask a last couple of ones here, now's the time. Here's Sivias asks, where do we send this year's version of Munchies for Crunchies, Yummy Wieners for Alpha Beta Tweeners?
Well, you know, hopefully we won't even have to do that, you know, this time. You know, certainly you guys were great with that last time, and unfortunately we couldn't deliver. We made a decision that was sucky, and it was one I would make, and I know I am speaking for Andrew on this as well, that we would make every single time. Yeah, it sucked, but it was the right thing to do. So whether we'll have a Munchies for Crunchies this time, we don't plan on crunching. I appreciate the sentiment. We want to deliver this the right way, and you folks have been so patient that, you know, we just want to, again, we want to do things the right way.
Do Munchies for Snackies.
Yeah.
Catries85, is it the goal of all classes to not have them grouped together? If so, will there be debuffs for multiple of the same class in a group? Can you?
I'm not sure why you would think the goal is not to group together. What we've said it is that we support group play, we encourage group play. The one thing that when it comes to groups, we've said there'll be ways to fight them, of course, are the Zerg. We've been very clear on what our feelings are about that. So if you'd like to rephrase your question, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I'm not sure why you would think the goal of the class system is to discourage grouping. We want to encourage grouping. But at the same time, as I've said so many times, still have a place for the solo guy. I solo.
It's the kind of the last of the questions. There's some questions about where you got your shirt.
Polo outlets. I get a lot of my stuff from the Polo outlets, especially when they go on double, you know, clearance sale discounts. You know, I'm a New Yorker. You learn how to go to outlets and look for a bargain. So it's amazing how much of my clothing over the years and the decades have come from, you know, outlet places and discounts and all that. My mom taught me well.
Andrew added a comment, I think, related to the rephrasing. I think he's asking if the goal is to discourage making homogenous groups like an 8-man of fire mages.
Okay, groovy. Yes, we do want to discourage that. Certainly, is it going to be possible to do that? Absolutely. Certainly, if you look at the history of Dark Age and other games, there were some interesting groups, running around. Is that right, Andrew?
I think that's what he was asking.
Okay. So you'll be able to do it. It won't be like you have to have a mechanic where you have to fill the slots with certain groups, certain rate classes, excuse me. But you'll pay a price for that. Granted, having 8 or 7 or 6 or whatever the number is, fire mages, running around, will give you an awful lot of power. On the other hand, it will make you vulnerable. Andrew's coming in with a handout. Uh-oh.
Careful.
Oh, God.
Come
I wish
on,
I
Mark.
was an Oscar Mayer wiener. Come on. If you're,
I don't know the words.
Oh!
He's bragging.
Oh!
Come on, Mark.
Got you into there.
Sit here and follow my lead then. That is what I truly want to be.
That is what he truly wants to be.
Because if I was an Oscar Mayer wiener,
Because if he was an Oscar Mayer wiener,
everyone would be in love with me.
they already are, man.
See?
See,
I knew it. I told you. And on that
What
note,
have we done to
on that note.
yeah.
What a redundant song.
Yeah. So on that note, hey Andrew, hang on. Come here.
Okay.
So and look at the man. Look at the stylish. Here I am looking like a reject. From a beach blanket bingo movie, and there's styling Mr. Meggs here.
Looking like a guy who's annoyed the Renfest is out of season.
So with all that, look, I'll let you folks know in about 45 minutes about whether it's going to be a beta 1, alpha and IT, or just an alpha and IT test. We are looking good, certainly for the alpha and IT, but hopefully we'll be inviting all our beta 1 folks in as well. So as always, we thank you for your support. We thank you for your patience. And week by week, folks, you can see it. The game is coming. And, thanks to Andrew and the entire programming team and to the art team who are going to do more and more game stuff. And to Ben, certainly, who has some very thankless jobs.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna make him go delete one line out of every single skill node XML file in about an hour.
Oh, God. So Ben won't be a happy guy. But it's all happening, and, again, we thank you for your support. We thank you for your patience, and hopefully I'll be seeing you in the game. Weekend all. Bye.